Okay, and we're live on the Niche Agent. So today we've got a great guest for you. It's Ted Peterson from SportsStar Relocation, and you're from Russ Lyon Sotheby. So Ted, why don't you take a quick second and tell us a bit about yourself and why you're here?
Okay, thanks, Ryan. Ted Peterson, Executive Vice President of SportsStar Relocation, and then I'm also President and CEO of SportsStar Relocation Arizona. And as you stated, I'm with Russ Lyon Sotheby's International Realty here in Scottsdale, Arizona.
Okay, so you're obviously here. We brought you on for your niche of working with SportsStar. So can you talk a bit about what you do with that then?
Yeah, basically SportsStar Relocation is a nationwide company, and what we do is we come into an athlete's life and handle really 100% of the elements of a player's relocation or a real estate transaction. And we do that nationwide. And then in Arizona, I handle all of the athlete business coming in and out of Arizona, and I do have a real estate partner at Russ Lyon Sotheby's, and her name is Terry Brock. So, you know, it's interesting because I'm part of a nationwide company, but then I also handle all of our business here in Arizona. And, you know, our job is basically come in, alleviate the stress, and help an athlete get settled into a new marketplace so that they can focus on really ultimately what's more important, which is usually the new team, the new players, the new playbook, all that kind of good stuff. So we like to handle all the off-the-field relocation elements as smoothly as possible.
So it's not just selling the house, you close the deal and you're done.
No. It's usually that's kind of where it all starts. We do everything from household goods, belongings, moves. We've transported hyperbaric chambers before. We've transported dogs. We ship cars. You know, we provide school information when possible, private chef information, private jet services. So it's really kind of, you know, A to Z relocation and real estate. And then it's a good question, Ryan, though, because it's really ultimately what makes not only my business but our agents that are in our network unique from other real estate agents is that we do so much above and beyond just the real estate transaction.
Okay, so can you kind of give an idea of the caliber of people you're working with? I know because of privacy you can't share specific names and things like that, but you're not just doing college football or high school football type people or sports stars like that.
No. It's you know, we're fortunate to meet so many wonderful people, and we do have a lot of real high-profile people that we work with. But one of the elements that's important for people to know that are, you know, even thinking about getting involved with athletes is that, you know, not everybody makes $10 million a year and is buying a $2 to $3 million house in the city that they're going to play in. So a lot of our time is actually spent sometimes doing, you know, I'm in Arizona, so spring training is a huge responsibility for us, and those leases are only 6 weeks long. And then a lot of our players sometimes are minor league players who are either coming and going from the major leagues back down to the minor leagues, or it could be people that are drafted in the late rounds or, you know, signed as a free agent, and they're not even sure if they're going to make the 53-man roster. So it really does kind of fluctuate top to bottom. But, yeah, we've been fortunate to work with a lot of high-profile guys and meet a lot of wonderful people and wonderful families along the way.
That's great. So now I always like to start and kind of go back from where, before you got there, what were you doing before that, and how did it kind of progress into this?
Yeah, well, my story is kind of unique in that I was in New York for about 5.5 years, and I was really fortunate at that time, Ryan, that I was able to work at the National Football League. And I was working for NFL properties, and when you work at the NFL, there's just all kinds of exposure with professional athletes. And, you know, we have NFL alumni up and down the hallways coming into the offices and so forth and so on. So my history goes back to the publishing industry with GQ magazine, Talk magazine. I was also at the NFL for 2.5 years. But it was the exposure at the NFL that made me realize that once I decided to get into real estate, that I really knew that I wanted to work with athletes relocating. And I had a little bit of a history in working with players and their families, and knew that that was something that I really wanted to target as kind of a goal of mine.
Okay. I want to go into how the actual process works, how you find and things like that, but I want to talk about, you said you've got the two brands, you've got the SportsStar Relocation behind you, but you also have the real estate brand behind you. So how do the two of those kind of work together, or do they complement each other?
Yeah, they really do. We're very fortunate, or at least I'm fortunate, and, you know, I know there's a lot of good brokerages around the country, of course, But for my business and the clientele that we're working with, when they get into the back seat of my car and I'm handing them a preview package that has Russ Lyon and the Sotheby's name on it, and then they know about my brand being SportsStar Relocation Arizona, the two brands combined really, I think, provide kind of a little bit of relief and calmness for our clients. It's always so warmly received with our players, and there's another element about that as well. If you're going to work with these guys and you're going to work with professional athletes, you got to do your homework. You have to know where the other athletes are living. That's one thing that we preach to our network of agents across the country, is we have what's called a local athlete address program, so that when a player gets in the back seat of your car, if he says, hey, I heard that player XYZ has a house that's for sale and I'm kind of interested in that price range, if you don't know where those players are living or what the athlete heavy communities are, you're not going to be doing it for very long.
Yeah, and that's, like you said, it's important to have that information to know, because if you don't, you're going to look silly, and they know, because they talk. There's locker talk. They know what's going on, and they know what's going on. If you don't know that, you can't really classify yourself as the expert. So other than knowing who lives where, what type of properties and things like that, what else is important in working with athletes then? Well,
I think we see a lot of similarities with the luxury market that maybe a normal businessman or a relocating executive would also want to have. But of course, we know that they do have some unique elements to what they do for a profession. Security, I think, is always high up there. A lot of these guys, and if you look at the different leagues, it varies, but take, for example, Major League Baseball. With the amount of games that they play during the season and the amount of time that the players are on the road, they have to make sure that they know that their wives and their kids and their family are in a secure environment when they're traveling so much during the year, and the season is so long. So security is a big deal. Location to the training facility usually comes into play for these guys. And then also the location of the airport. And we have kind of something that we created specifically with SportsStar Relocation and the founder, Ed Kaminsky. It's called the SSR Triangle. And what we do is we take into consideration, where the training facility is, where the airport is, and where they're playing their games. And it kind of forms this unique triangle. And it's really important for real estate agents to know where those places are, so that when they're placing a professional athlete, that they're kind of in proximity of all those places. And sometimes we run into situations where players have possibly used other real estate agents that were recommended by maybe a trainer or an ex-girlfriend or something just crazy like that. And a lot of times we're kind of brought in to almost fix a bad situation, because the agent that sold them the house wasn't thinking about those specific elements. So that's important to these guys as well.
So you mentioned a lot of it tends to be just leases as well. So it's not just this dreamy, I'm going to sell them a $10 million property. So there's a different element to it when you're doing the leases. Do you find a lot of it is coming from the leases, and what type of leases, and what's that look like then?
Yeah, the leasing business, the best way to describe it, Ryan, is really that it's kind of a necessary evil for us. I mean, if you really want to work with professional athletes, you're going to be doing a decent amount of leases. I remember one specific example when I was interviewing an agent in Atlanta who wanted to be part of our network, and we didn't end up kind of joining forces, but he said to me when we were kind of finishing things up, he said, well, if you have a player that's going to buy a $3-4 million house in Atlanta, I'm always here for you guys. And I had to chuckle and kind of laugh, and I was honest with him. I said, you don't really get kind of how our business works. You do the leases, that's kind of the groundwork that creates, like you talked about earlier, the back and forth in the locker room that goes on between these players. When you do a good job on a 6-month lease for the season, on a player that, yeah, he might be making a couple $1 million a year, but he's being responsible with his finances, and maybe he's looking for a $2,500 a month lease.
Yeah.
When you do a good job for a professional athlete on that lease, that's when the word kind of travels throughout the locker room, and that's kind of how you end up building your business. But if you're going into this industry thinking that you're going to buy, 10 multi-million-dollar properties in your first 6 months of working with players, you're going to be, you're going to be surprised.
Yeah, it's just like any lead generation in the real estate business is you plant your seeds, you water it, some grow, some don't. The ones that grow are profitable. You don't give up on everything. Those leases can be maybe a new agent or a new player, I'm sure, who may get a multi-million-dollar contract next year, and if you take care of them now, they'll turn around and be down the road. So
there is one thing, Ryan, that I want to add that it is important. Sometimes these guys, again, they might be with a team, and some of them are just not sure if they're going to be there in 3 months. So we have different clauses and different sort of phrasing that we put into their lease agreements, so that if in fact they're cut unexpectedly or they have a season-ending injury and they need to go to another state to rehab, that we can get them out of those leases, and then the financial penalty is very, very minimal. We think ahead in terms of leases, right. So that's something that's very important for our clients.
So, I mean, a lot of it sounds like it's the buying side because they're coming in, they're buying or leasing, but how much of it is finding the properties, having that inventory? Because you obviously, if you have a lease, you want to be able to know where to get the leases and connections. Yeah. So how much of it is that work then, too?
Yeah, that's a good question, too, and I think a lot of it goes into that. One of the things that we recommend to our agents to do initially is to put the time in and really do the research on your local marketplace of properties or developments or communities, and that could be purchased or it could be for leasing. That's going to be attractive to a professional athlete, and go in there and you get to know the leasing agents there. They get to know you. They see the brand that you're doing. They know that you're not just kind of a fly-by-night real estate agent that may work with an athlete once in a blue moon. So a lot of time needs to be spent doing that, and then there's also another element of getting to know your local vendors in your marketplace. Most of these guys want to buy cars. Most of them, will have wives or girlfriends that want to work out at the most sought-after gyms in your community. Even having relationships with local resort properties, which we do here in Scottsdale, really helps out when you get extended stay requests and situations for guys coming in town to maybe even rehab for 30 days. And, they may not want to lease a house for 30 days. They may want to stay at a resort for a month. So to have all that stuff kind of ready to go for these guys, again, is what makes them realize once they start working with you that you know what you're doing and you know the athlete business inside and out.
Yeah, you become a concierge service for them and not just the real estate transaction.
Yeah, exactly right.
So for you, are you getting, I know you're doing all of those extra services and moving things, are you getting paid on top of the real estate deal, or is it strictly just coming from the sale or lease of the property?
Well, the way that it works actually is that SportsStar Relocation, we have a couple of preferred kind of vendors that we have a relationship with. So when I'm involved with business that goes nationwide and we're using some of our big movers and car transport companies, then there's a small referral fee that comes back to our company because we're managing the whole transaction process as well, and we're involved. And us being involved, again, is what kind of, takes some of the stress out and takes some of the chaos out of the move. We all know moving's really never easy, but our job is to really be there and manage the situation, whether it be for a player's mom, his wife, his girlfriend, or dealing directly with the player. So very, very little money comes back to us for those types of relationships. And you know how the world of leasing is in real estate. We have a popular saying that, we do the leases so that we get to meet the financial advisors and the sports agents, and we get to know the player. A lot of times we get to know his kids. So it's just a necessary evil with our business, but it also does. It results in a lot of continuing relationships. I've got one client of ours that was here in Arizona at one point with the Cardinals, and he's gone to 5 different NFL teams over the last year and a half, and each stop along the way, I've been able to help him get relocated to that NFL city because of our nationwide network and the agents that I have all throughout the country that work with players and have helped him each step along the way. So it's a nice thing to see our services extend that far out.
Yeah, and they appreciate it, I'm sure, more than most people would even understand. So
they do, and that's Ryan. That's one of the nice things about our business is you get to see really the direct effect that you have on a player and his wife and their kids. I say a lot of times that you give me a single let's say an NFL player, a single guy, that's easy. We do that kind of in our sleep. Give me a seasoned NFL guy or a baseball player that's been to 6 or 7 teams, has a pregnant wife, 2 children under the age of 3, and a couple more kids, and they need to sell a place in another market. That's where we really shine, and that's where you absolutely can see the impact that we have on their lives. And like I said earlier, it's nice that we can help them get settled so that they can focus on ultimately what is more important, which is what they do for a living and what generates, their salary.
Yeah. So, and obviously in that kind of transaction, it's not just going to be the husband and wife or kids that are involved in the transaction. You're bringing in lawyers, agents, property managers, whatever. So that's got to be a whole other element to the business, and not just dealing with those.
Yeah, you're exactly right. We all read stories, I think, in the press about players who, go through, $30, $40 million in a couple of years, and they end up bankrupt. I personally haven't dealt with those types of players. Most of the guys that we work with, and I think it's kind of a result of us getting to know certain financial advisors and sports agents that they also want to have a certain type of client. And so, the guys that we usually are involved with, they're surrounded by people that are watching, almost every dime they spend. And if anything, it makes us negotiate, I think, even at a greater level for our clients, because we know that any deal that we're going to get them into, whether it be a lease or a purchase, it's going to go by, like you said, usually the agent, the financial advisor. Sometimes there's another business manager that might look at things. And so, yeah, you really become, I think, really well versed at dealing with a player's inner circle of people, keeping everyone involved along the way. And that's one thing that my real estate partner, Terry Brock, just does an amazing job of. I mean, it's the amount of attention to detail is at a whole nother level when you're working with a professional athlete.
Do you find that the entourage, the people, are they helping the process make it easier, or are they kind of killing deals? Because I know I've heard stories of an agent stopping it, or some guy wants to go and buy $1 million property and they telling him no. Like, are you finding there's a lot of clash between the two?
I think a couple years ago I would have answered that question probably closer to a yes, because there were, we had 2 major leagues that were about to go into a labor dispute, and we had players that wanted to buy property here in Arizona, but some of the financial advisors were putting the brakes on some things. I think now that those 2 leagues have worked out their labor disputes, and they know they're going to be playing football and playing hockey for the next, I think, 5 or 6 or 7 years without interruption. Mm-hmm. It has eased up, which was good news. And I think then also the real estate market coming back a little bit also was, important, as everybody. I mean, when they're reading things in the media constantly that real estate is not where you want to have your money and so forth, it has an effect on them, even if in fact that might have been one of the better opportunities for a lot of these guys to make some solid investments. They still tend to get caught up in what they read, and then they have financial advisors who that's their job, is to watch the market on a daily basis.
So, I mean, we talked about the whole process, because I mean, the public would like to see the talking about the sports stars and the interactions, but I want to talk more about the business itself, because this is for agents. So I want to talk more a little in deeper of what that looks like. Okay. For you, the SportsStar Relocation, what does that look like for the agents that are involved in? Because, I mean, you guys are providing a service to the agents, and the agents are providing services to you guys. Can you kind of explain how that works?
Yeah. Basically, you're talking about the nationwide network, correct?
Right.
Yeah. Well, what we do is our program is really designed to do 2 things. One, it's designed to help agents either further their athlete business or break into working with professional athletes. So we have a whole program called Local Area Representative. We call it the LAR program. And it basically was based on Ed Kaminsky, the founder of the company, working with players in LA for the 20-plus years now. And everything that he knows and everything that I've learned over the past 10 years of what exactly do you need to do to either further your athlete business or even to break into it. that's point number one. Then point number two is, if you're working with professional athletes in your marketplace, that can do a lot of impact for your luxury business, because as we know, Ryan, how many luxury property owners do you come across that don't think their house is perfect for a professional athlete? So with all the tools and the branding and what we allow our agents to use, including our nationwide website, we allow them to take a property and expose it to professional athletes who might be coming into their marketplace. And that can do a lot for their luxury business in their local markets all over the country. So it's kind of a double-prong benefit for agents having an association with us.
So for the agents that are involved, then, are you teaching them how to do the marketing? Are you teaching them how to get in front of that? Or is that kind of they're coming in with those skills or those connections already?
A little bit of both. You know, ideally, when we started the whole LAR program about 8 years ago, we were doing a lot of teaching, doing a lot of mastermind groups, talking about what marketing works, what doesn't, even going as far as saying, look, if you're going to go to a team activity, does it make more money to invest in this golf tournament, or does it make more money to sponsor a hole and do this? So we were doing a lot more teaching years ago. What we've done recently is now we've seeked out agents in athlete-heavy markets all over the country, and we've found agents that already have kind of a direct relationship with a specific team, and we approach those agents and say, okay, great, you know, you might be working with the Chicago Bears closely. I'll use Chicago as an example. But with SportsStar being behind you and all of the assets that we bring to the table and all these tools, we can actually help you break into possibly, you know, if you want to call on the Blackhawks or the Cubs or whatever that specific situation might be. So we do a little bit of both. We're not afraid to bring agents into the network that don't have a ton of athlete experience. But at the same time, I think when we bring a more seasoned real estate agent into our network that does have experience with athletes, I think Ed and myself tend to sleep a little bit better at night knowing that they already kind of come to us with a little bit of experience and knowledge.
Right. So for the agents that you have already in the network, do you find they came with real estate background and then got exposure with sports, or did they, like you, where you had this sports background and then kind of got into the real estate world as a result of it?
Yeah, not to sound repetitive, but a little bit of both.
Okay.
I say most of the time the agents are successful agents in their marketplace, and they've probably worked with a couple of athletes, and they've experienced the transaction and said, hey, I want to do more of this. How can I do more of this? And that's sometimes where SportsStar Relocation gets, you know, seeked out by these successful real estate agents all over the country. We also have, you know, some ex-athletes themselves who they get done with their sport, and we all know that a lot of them go into TV, but not all of them do. There's only so many seats in front of the camera. So some of them actually do. They see how much that it's funny, because a lot of the athletes that come to us say, you know, I kind of didn't have the best experience with real estate agents during my career. And I'm coming from a mindset that I know all of the stresses that are on these guys and their family. I can actually do a better job than the real estate agents that helped me during my career. And so, yeah, we've had a lot of ex-NFL people and ex-Major League Baseball people that have come to us and have kind of a second career in real estate and actually have been very successful as a result.
Yeah, that makes total sense because they know the industry. So why not leverage on that and make money? Especially if they're not playing sports, it's a good way to carry on and make maybe even better money if they're doing it right.
Yeah, right, exactly.
So you were talking about the local athletes address program. What other kind of marketing and ways to get into the what does a typical agent do to get into that community then?
Yeah, well, it all kind of starts with, you know, we're constantly tracking trades, and obviously at key times during the year really paying attention to, you know, whether it be the NFL draft or when the rosters are set at 53 man, or, you know, trade deadlines in the different leagues. So you're constantly paying attention to all that type of information. Then, you know, we're always reaching out to the agents, and agents have so much on their plate that even a lot of times they're not as involved as you would think they would be with the actual, you know, relocation element of their players. The financial advisors, those guys are always interested in hearing about SportsStar Relocation because, again, it goes back to their job is to make sure that their guy doesn't run out of money. In fact, is continuing to make smart, good investments along the way of his career. Then there's also the social media. I mean, the social media, the wives groups are big for us. You know, we all know the saying that a happy wife is a happy life. So connecting with them a lot of times is very important, and it can be effective as well. There's even moms groups across some of the leagues where the moms of a lot of these guys, because you have to remember, Ryan, a lot of these guys are, you know, 20, 21, 22 years old and being handed millions of dollars. So sometimes the parents are still involved, and so yeah, we're doing that as well.
Yeah, it's obviously has a different animal for marketing to it than typical real estate, because you can't just put an ad in the paper, you can't just go door knock, you can't do open houses. So it's good to hear kind of what the things are doing, and that's what this show is about, is to show agents that there's 101 ways to do real estate. The ebook that I created says that, but it's the strategies for each market is going to be completely different, and each type of business is going to be different. So.
Yeah, and you know what was really unique is this whole, you know, the boom of Twitter has been really pretty amazing in terms of reaching professional athletes, because when before could you actually, you know, reach out and, you know, tweet a player something about, you know, you being able to help them in a given marketplace, and you know the communities inside and out, the location of the training facilities, and you may or may not know some of the representatives at the front office. So Twitter actually is something that's been real effective for us, and I encourage all of our agents, along with the other social media, obviously, avenues. Twitter comes into play with us quite a bit as well, and it really did this past NFL free agency and during the 2014 NFL draft, and was very effective for us.
That's good. Yeah, it's crazy to see the growth of that, and to see people connect and really start seeing these celebrities, whether sports stars, movie stars, whatever, really reach out and jump on board with that and have fun with it, and you see them really connecting and engaging with their audience, and that makes them a better celebrity and a more wanted star, because their audience really engages with that. Yeah,
it's just a whole new world of like you said, branding their own brand and reaching their fans on a minute by minute basis almost, if they want to. It's definitely changed the way that we all perceive, you know, athletes and movie stars and celebrities alike. So it's been a pretty amazing ride so far.
So what would you say would be one of the best fun outside of the normal typical benefits to being on? Like what's some of the experiences that you got to have that you probably would never had if you weren't involved?
You know, I think one of the things that we like to do, of course, is whenever you have an opportunity to get in front of these guys, you always kind of want to work on doing that. So whether it be a celebrity golf outing, or even going to training camp, or going to a team function. For me, one of my specific highlights was going to the NFL Combine. A couple years ago, Ed Kaminsky and I, the founder of the company, we went to the NFL Combine at Indy. And, you know, some of the agents that we work with, the sports agents that we work with, and some of the trainer relationships that we have, and we haven't really touched on the trainer angle yet, but it's real important, especially in my market where a lot of players come to train. They had us up to some of the, you know, they rent out entire floors for their athletes to kind of, you know, warm up, and sometimes even just sit and play video games to relax between all the drills. But we had some pretty good insight as to what really happens at the NFL Combine when the players are off camera and not being tested, and everything that goes into it. It was really fascinating, and you know, at the end of the day, I'm a pretty big sports fan. You try not to be a fan when you're working with these guys, but you know, at the end of the day, I love sports, and I probably wouldn't be doing this if I didn't. So it was really an amazing opportunity to see kind of behind the scenes everything that goes on at the NFL Combine, and you know, guys are either making or losing millions of dollars, so it's very high pressure and high stress, and you really almost feel for them and all the pressure that's on their shoulders.
Are you ever still starstruck, or do you get that awe when you meet new people, or have you lost that novelty?
Well, you know what? It's the thing that I've learned over time, Ryan, is that it really is amazing that you know, I'll use a certain player example without mentioning his name, but he happens to have a contract right now that I think is about $167 million over 8 years.
Wow.
And, you know, you get to meet him and you get to meet his wife and his kids, and he's really, truly just a normal person like you and I. You know, I mean, yeah, he might get paid more money than we'll probably ever see in our lifetime, but he just is actually a guy that, you know, still playing a game that he loves. And I think the biggest thing that impacts me is what normal people they really are once you're around them.
Yeah. It's same for me doing this interview. This podcast is, I interviewed some of the top agents across North America, and before I started this, I was thinking these guys are celebrities, they're untouchable, and they're actually the nicest, the most warm, the most sharing, well-spoken, caring people, and it's just been awesome to see, and it's totally changed my view of celebrity, I guess, in the real estate world. But
yeah, you know, one of the nice things is that I think almost, you know, you just turn on SportsCenter on any given night, and I usually see a person that I've had some sort of, you know, some sort of an association with, and it's, you know, you see them up on TV long enough, and you think all these things about them, and at the end of the day, they're just regular people that are doing something that they love, and they all, for the most part, they realize how fortunate they are to be in the position they are, and again, a lot of their careers are not very long, especially when you look at the NFL and the average length of a career in the NFL. So, you know, Terry, my real estate partner, and I really feel like we've been so fortunate to work with just some wonderful people throughout the years, and there are relationships that we still have, you know, even today. And, you know, one of the unique elements about this whole thing is that, you know, you can sell somebody a house or you can have a client, and it's not like they're going to be here all year long. I mean, they might, you know, leave Scottsdale and go play ball in Toronto, and I don't see them for 8 months out of the year because they're doing what they do for a profession. So we like to stay in touch with them, and we've done, I think, a pretty good job of doing that, and then, of course, that leads to referrals and more business. So it's been exciting.
That's great. So where do you see the future, then, of SportsStar Relocation?
Well, I think our future has actually been really good because we've been busier now with the time period that we just went through, which was very NFL heavy. So we just went through NFL free agency and then the draft. And I know our network has grown. I think we have close to about 45 agents in our network nationwide right now. And as we talked about a little bit, we've been adding some agents that really are coming to us with already having a couple of good team connections in their marketplace, but they want to expand their business. So I think our business model is very good for the future. I do think we're seeing maybe more and more players that are leasing properties in the cities that they're going to play in, and I think that that's kind of a direct result of free agency and the fact that, you know, you look at an NFL roster, and I believe it's close to a third of the team now turns over every year.
Wow.
And players know that, their agents know that, and the financial advisors know that. So unless you're, you know, Tom Brady or, you know, Kelvin Johnson or some of those guys, of course, a lot of the players, when they are going to a new city and they sign a new deal, they're still being smart about some things, and I think that they're making sure that they're going to be there for more than just a couple years before they purchase real estate, which in my eyes isn't a bad idea.
Yeah, it makes total sense.
Yeah.
So can you share one piece of advice then for our listeners if they're thinking about getting into the sports relocation industry, or if they're kind of already have their hands in it, something that they can take away from?
Yeah, I think this niche, as you call it, is one that can be incredibly exciting and incredibly rewarding. The biggest piece of advice that I would have, because I see it almost on a weekly basis, is, you know, all the real estate agents out there have their core business, and your core business needs to be good and keep you going. I don't think it's a very smart idea to jump into this business and say, you know, my athlete business is going to pay all my bills every week of the year. I think you have to keep your core business good. You have to be willing to do the dirty work, as I call it. You have to be willing to do the leases, You have to be willing to work on weekends and holidays because the time schedule that these guys are on is crazy. So it's more work than most agents think. But if you're willing to put the work in and you're really truly have a passion and want to help these guys, then I think it can be a wonderful addition to your core real estate business.
That's great. So then if our listeners are wanting to check out what SportsStar Relocation is all about and just kind of see what you guys are up to, what's the best way for them to find out that information then?
Well, our website is sportstarrelocation.com. My local website here is SSRAZ, which is for SportsStar Relocation Arizona. So SSRAZ.com. On Twitter, I am TPSSRAZ. And, we're all on Facebook and everything like that. But I think most of the information is at sportstarrelocation.com.
Okay, perfect. We'll put that in the show notes so people can check that out. And if they have those connections and they're wanting to take that SportsStar business to that next level, we can get them to connect with you and connect and see where that goes.
That'd be great. And also, Ryan, I've been in discussions with some real estate agents up in the Toronto market, and I know you and I had some discussions about that. But a couple other Canadian markets too that I'm looking for people. So if you're an agent that's in Vancouver, Montreal, Ottawa, or Toronto, come connect with me, say hi, and love to have a conversation with you and see if you might be a good fit.
Perfect. Well, Ted, thank you for being on the show. We really appreciate it, and it's great to see a different angle because it's totally different than most of the real estate that most of us are used to. So thank you for sharing your insights, and we look forward to seeing the future of SportsStar Relocation.
Thank you, Ryan. It's been a pleasure. Thanks for having me on.
Thanks for being here.